Hello everybody, my name is Amaris. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the art that was made during pre-war and World War I years. The three different types of art that we're going to talk a little bit about is Expressionism, Futurism, and Photography. Let's get started. The first kind of art that we're going to talk about is Expressionism, which is a type of art that was formed as a reaction to the anxiety about humanity's increasingly harsh relationship with the world. In this work, artists portrayed the distortion of form and used bold colors to show different anxieties and yearnings that they felt. It's basically the opposite of Impressionism. So this type of art was turning artists' work into something that now shows their feelings and emotions within rather than a composition analysis of paintings of an external observation that people could see. It's like art that not just shows an object or situation in the artist's perspective, but what the artist feels deep down that no one else could necessarily see with their eyes. Some of the techniques that artists used in Expressionism to depict their anxieties about the modern world, artists would use swirly and exaggerated brushstrokes with their paintbrushes. Initially, most expressionists welcomed the war because they thought it would take over the middle class. Instead, the war caused expressionists to feel anxious and insecure. They portrayed and depicted their feelings in their art. So now we're moving on to photography. The camera in photography is different than a paintbrush, not just because the camera is a machine, but it does not manipulate or distort the image like a paintbrush does for a painting. There's tons of different types of photography, and we won't go into all of them because it is a long talk, but there's some of the different kinds of photography that there are out there is futurism, data, surrealist, fashion, photojournalism, documentary, street, abstract, snapshot, aesthetic, postmodern, and other types of photography as well. The kinds of effects that World War I made on photography, there are many different ways that World War I affected photography. People used photos of injured veterans and other images as political protests and statements against another war. In my opinion, World War I affected photographers' work by giving them the opportunity to capture real-life images in the moment and use it to show their political statements and feelings about war. Now, futurism. This is a kind of art focused more on making a unique depiction of the future in general. Artists focus on what the world is leading to or what the world could be. This was a very violent and raging type of art that rejected traditional forms of art. These art pieces expressed speed and motion by using blur and repetition in the images. And here in some of the pictures that I'm showing, you can see how they were able to make the picture look like it's moving. Futurists were extremely patriotic. They were very excited and triggered by violence and passionately depicted the machine age. Machine age as in cars and airplanes and just the time period that technology really started to evolve and increase. New technologies was often included in their works. So before World War I, futurists believed that war would actually be good for people and help their generation become much stronger. They believed that agitation and destruction would create new and better energy for everyone. But the devastation from World War I spread and brought an end to the futurist movement. When looking at some of these artworks for Expressionism, you can definitely see how they definitely were pretty anxious and scared at the time because just the way that they made the brushstrokes pulling down the faces and making their faces look longer and much more anxious. It just really puts the picture together to help you understand the way that they felt. And one of the most, my personal favorite in this type of artwork is The Scream, which Edvard Montreux depicted his anxious feelings when he was walking with his friends, and he felt like the sky had turned blood red all of a sudden, and it just freaked him out. And so this was just a little painting of that little story from his experience. One of my favorite examples of photography is this photo here with the woman and her children. Well, it appears to be her children, and she looks really stressed out, and her children are depending on her. She's got all this weight on her shoulders, and she looks like she's pondering about how she can support her family. And I just thought it was a very good example of how the war caused people to feel insecure and just anxious, and how photography was able to capture that moment without having to manipulate their faces. This was just all natural. Here, one of the examples that we have here, you can definitely see how futurists were very, I guess you could say, hungry on violence, because some of their most popular paintings had a lot of fire and people being hurt. And it's a very, very raging and dark paintings that they often made, and they're very supportive of war.